Have you ever trusted someone so completely that their betrayal shattered everything you believed about family? What would you do if your own mother destroyed the most important moment of your life? This is exactly what happened to Damien Sterling on what should have been the happiest day of his life. June 15th, 2024. Nantucket's exclusive coastline. 300 America's elite gathered for a wedding that would make headlines for all the wrong reasons. Damien Sterling, the 42-year-old CEO worth $4.7 billion, stood waiting for his bride Sophia at the altar. His sustainable energy empire, Green Horizon, had made him one of the most respected billionaires in the country. But here's what makes Damien different from other wealthy powerhouses: he earned every dollar the hard way. Growing up in working-class Pittsburgh, losing his father at 14, watching his mother remarry for money instead of love. Sound familiar? Maybe you know someone who climbed out of poverty through sheer determination. Maybe that someone is you. Damien thought he'd finally found peace. Sophia, a pediatric doctor who treated him like a regular person, not a bank account. Their love story gave him hope that maybe, just maybe, he could trust again after his devastating first marriage ended in betrayal 5 years earlier. As Sophia glided down the aisle in her stunning white gown, Damien's heart swelled with joy. This was his second chance at happiness, his fresh start, his redemption. Then he saw her, Clara Bennett, his ex-wife, the woman who disappeared from his life after their bitter divorce, walking arm in arm with his own mother, Margaret. But Clara wasn't alone. 2 small children clung to her dress. A boy and a girl, maybe 3 years old. Their dark hair caught the ocean breeze. Their eyes, those unmistakable sterling green eyes, met Damien's across the crowd. The guests fell silent. Sophia stopped mid-step, and Margaret Sterling smiled with the cold satisfaction of a woman who had just detonated a bomb at her own son's wedding. In the next 8 minutes, you'll discover how a mother's jealousy and manipulation destroyed not just one life, but potentially 4. How $2 million bought silence. How love letters were intercepted. And how sometimes the people who are supposed to protect us become our greatest enemies. This story will change how you view family loyalty forever. To understand how a mother could destroy her son's wedding day, we need to go back 30 years to a cramped 2-bedroom house in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Young Damien Sterling lived paycheck to paycheck with his parents, Thomas and Margaret. His father worked grueling 12-hour shifts as a civil engineer, coming home covered in concrete dust and exhaustion. His mother, Margaret, managed the local Sunrise Diner, serving coffee and dreams to blue-collar workers who reminded her daily of what she didn't have. Do you know someone who turned childhood pain into extraordinary success? Because Damien's transformation began with tragedy. When Damien was 14, Thomas Sterling died in a construction accident, a crane malfunction. One moment he was there, the next gone. The insurance payout barely covered the funeral costs. Margaret suddenly faced raising a teenage son on a diner manager's salary, watching bills pile up while dreams crumbled. The grief should have brought mother and son closer. Instead, it drove them apart. Within 18 months, Margaret was dating Harold Kensington, a ruthless real estate mogul 20 years her senior. Harold owned half the commercial properties in downtown Pittsburgh and had a reputation for crushing small businesses that couldn't pay his sky-high rents. He was everything Thomas Sterling wasn't: wealthy, connected, and completely without conscience. 16-year-old Damien watched his mother transform overnight, gone were the worn uniforms and tired smiles. Margaret now wore designer clothes and attended charity galas where she rubbed shoulders with Pittsburgh's elite. She moved them into Harold's mansion in Shadyside, but the luxury felt like a prison to Damien. "Your father was a dreamer," Margaret told him one night after another argument about Harold's business practices. "Dreams don't pay for college. Dreams don't buy security. Harold gives us what your father never could." That conversation broke something fundamental between them. Damien realized his mother hadn't just married Harold for love, she'd married him to escape the working-class life that reminded her of Thomas's death. Every expensive gift, every upgraded lifestyle choice, felt like a betrayal of his father's memory. Harold tried to bond with his new stepson by offering him summer jobs at Kensington Properties. Learn the business, kid. Learn how to win. But Damien saw how Harold won by forcing out family restaurants to build parking lots, by raising rents until elderly shop owners lost everything their grandparents had built. This is where Damien's character was forged. While his classmates worried about prom dates and football games, he was studying engineering textbooks and environmental science, determined to build wealth without destroying communities. Harold noticed. "You're too soft. Just like your father," he'd say. "The world eats soft people alive." Damien's response. "Then I'll change the world." 17, he earned a full scholarship to MIT. Margaret attended his graduation alone. Harold was too busy closing a deal that would displace 200 families. As Damien walked across that stage, he made himself a promise. He would prove that success didn't require sacrificing your soul. His early years at MIT were brutal. While classmates partied, Damien worked 3 jobs and studied solar engineering. He saw the future in renewable energy, a way to build an empire that actually helped people instead of exploiting them. His roommates thought he was crazy. "Oil companies have all the money, Sterling. Why fight them?" "Because someone has to," Damien replied. By 25, he'd founded Green Horizon Energy with a revolutionary solar integrated roofing system. The technology wasn't just efficient, it was beautiful, affordable, and accessible to middle-class families. Everything Harold's business model wasn't. Margaret watched from a distance as her son's company grew. First a $1 million contract with the school district, then $10 million from a hospital network, then the breakthrough, a $2.3 billion federal contract to power 1.2 million homes across Nevada. Damien Sterling, the working-class kid from Pittsburgh, was now worth $4.7 billion. But unlike his stepfather, he built his fortune by lifting others up, not tearing them down. Sometimes our greatest wounds become our greatest strengths. Damien's abandonment taught him loyalty. His father's death taught him that life is fragile. His mother's choices taught him that money without values is worthless. But there was one lesson Margaret had taught him that would prove devastating. Never trust anyone completely, because the people closest to you have the power to hurt you most. That lesson was about to destroy everything he'd worked for. Success in business didn't translate to success in love until Damien met Clara Bennett. It was 2019, and Damien had been invited to testify before a Senate committee about clean energy policy. As he outlined Green Horizon's vision for sustainable infrastructure, a sharp voice cut through the political pleasantries. "Mr. Sterling, your Nevada project displaced 3 indigenous communities. How do you reconcile profit with social responsibility?" The question came from Clara Bennett, a 29-year-old environmental lawyer representing tribal rights. While other senators lobbed softball questions, Clara challenged him with facts, statistics, and genuine concern for the people behind the policies. Damien was captivated. After his testimony, he approached her. "You're absolutely right about the displacement issue. Would you be willing to consult on our community impact protocols?" Clara raised an eyebrow. "Is this how billionaires usually get dates? Offering consulting contracts. Is it working?" Damien asked. It was. Their first dinner lasted 6 hours. Clara had grown up in Boston, daughter of a public defender and a social worker. She'd never dated wealthy men. Frankly, she'd never trusted them. But Damien was different. He asked about her work with environmental justice, not her dress size. He donated anonymously to her legal aid clinic before their 3rd date. Within months, they were inseparable. Clara helped Green Horizons secure a $400 million federal grant by navigating the complex environmental regulations that had stumped Damien's legal team. He supported her pro bono cases against polluting corporations, even when those corporations were potential clients. They were the ultimate power couple, his business acumen, her legal brilliance, their shared values creating something bigger than either could achieve alone. Margaret watched this partnership with growing alarm. "She's using you," she warned Damien during a tense family dinner. "Environmental lawyers hate successful businessmen. She's gathering intelligence." "Clara's not like that," Damien replied. "She genuinely cares about making a difference." "Every woman cares about making a difference to her bank account," Margaret shot back. But Damien was in love. In 2020, he proposed with a ring made from ethically sourced diamonds and recycled platinum, Clara's suggestion. Their wedding was small, intimate, focused on commitment rather than spectacle. Margaret attended but barely smiled in the photos. The first 3 years of marriage were blissful. Clara moved to Damien's estate, but kept her own career, her own friends, her own identity. They traveled together, worked together, built a life that balanced ambition with authenticity. Then came the heartbreak that millions of couples know too well. Clara couldn't get pregnant. Month after month, negative tests. Doctor visits revealed no clear medical reason. Sometimes these things just happen. The stress began eating at their relationship. Damien threw himself deeper into work. Clara blamed herself, then blamed him for his emotional distance. "Talk to me," she pleaded after another miscarriage. "We're supposed to face this together." "I am talking to you," Damien replied, though they both knew he wasn't. His childhood had taught him to internalize pain, to handle problems alone. Clara needed connection. Damien provided solutions. She needed emotional support. He offered medical specialists. During their lowest point, Clara made a mistake. A brief affair with David Chang, a colleague at her law firm. 3 weeks of seeking comfort in the wrong place before guilt overwhelmed her, and she confessed to Damien. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I was hurting and I felt so alone. And we're done," Damien said quietly. But here's what neither of them knew. Margaret had been watching, waiting, planning. While Damien and Clara struggled with fertility, Margaret hired a private investigator to monitor Clara's every move. Phone records, credit card statements, even surveillance photos. When the investigator documented Clara's affair, Margaret saw her opportunity. She didn't tell Damien immediately. Instead, she waited for the perfect moment when Clara had ended the affair and was trying to rebuild their marriage. Margaret anonymously mailed Damien a manila envelope containing photos of Clara and David together. The timing was calculated and cruel. Clara had just discovered she was finally pregnant, conceived during their last attempt at reconciliation before her confession. But Damien, devastated by the photos and feeling completely betrayed, refused to listen. "You lied to me about everything," he accused. "I told you about David. I was trying to fix us. Too late." The divorce was swift and brutal. Clara, overwhelmed by pregnancy hormones and legal battles, retreated to Boston. She tried calling Damien when the twins were born, but Margaret intercepted the messages. "He doesn't want to hear from you," Margaret told Clara during a secret phone call. "Haven't you hurt him enough?" For 5 years, Margaret successfully kept Clara and the twins hidden from Damien's life. Every birthday card returned to sender. Every attempted email blocked. Every legal letter claiming paternity mysteriously never reached Damien's desk. Comment below if you've ever had a family member interfere in your relationship, because what Margaret did next would make their lives exponentially worse. She offered Clara money to stay silent. $2 million in exchange for never contacting Damien again. Clara, struggling as a single mother with mounting legal debts, reluctantly accepted. Margaret's plan was working perfectly. Damien remained isolated, wounded, and under her influence. Clara remained hidden with his children. And Margaret maintained control of her son's emotional life. The people closest to us can inflict the deepest wounds. Margaret had learned this lesson well, and she was about to teach it to her son in the most devastating way possible. Because keeping secrets requires constant vigilance, and when Damien fell in love again, Margaret realized she needed a permanent solution to the Clara problem. The wedding sabotage wasn't random cruelty. It was the final move in a chess game that had been 5 years in the making. 4 years after his divorce, Damien Sterling had built walls around his heart that seemed impenetrable. He dated occasionally beautiful socialites who understood his world, but never let anyone close enough to matter. Then he met Dr. Sofia Alvarez at the most unexpected place. Damien was visiting the Miami Children's Hospital, which Green Horizon had funded with a $50 million renewable energy system. He was there for a routine photo opportunity, another corporate charity event to check off his list. But in the pediatric oncology ward, he encountered something that stopped him cold. The young doctor was reading to a group of bold children, her voice animated as she brought fairy tales to life. She wore scrubs instead of designer clothes, sneakers instead of heels. When she laughed at a 6-year-old's joke, her whole face lit up with genuine joy. "Excuse me," Damien interrupted. "I'm Damien Sterling, from Green Horizon Energy." Sofia looked up, unimpressed. "Dr. Sofia Alvarez, thanks for the solar panels, but these kids need treatment funding more than photo ops with billionaires." Most people fawned over Damien's wealth. Sofia challenged him to do better. He donated $20 million to the treatment fund that afternoon. Their relationship grew slowly, carefully. Sofia refused his expensive gifts, preferring homemade dinners to 5-star restaurants. She saw through his CEO persona to the wounded man underneath, the boy who'd lost his father too young and never learned to trust completely. "You don't have to carry everything alone," she told him during one of their Long Beach walks. "That's what partners are for." For the first time since Clara, Damien began to believe in second chances. Margaret watched this development with growing panic. Sofia wasn't like the vapid socialites Margaret could easily manipulate. She was independent, intelligent, and worst of all, she was changing Damien. He was becoming softer, more open, less dependent on his mother's guidance. "Have you ever been manipulated by someone who claimed to love you?" Margaret began her campaign subtly. She invited Sofia to lunch, expressing concern about Damien's trust issues from his previous marriage. She shared carefully edited stories about Clara's betrayal, painting herself as the devoted mother who'd protected her son from further heartbreak. "I just want him to be happy," Margaret would say, dabbing her eyes theatrically. "After what Clara put him through, he deserves someone loyal like you." But privately, Margaret was making different plans. When Damien proposed to Sofia in January 2024, Margaret's congratulations felt hollow. The engagement announcement triggered something desperate in her, a realization that she was about to lose control of her son permanently. That's when she made the call that would destroy everything. "Clara, this is Margaret Sterling. We need to talk." Clara Bennett had spent 5 years rebuilding her life in Boston. The twins, Lily and Lucas, were thriving 3-year-olds who asked endless questions about their absent father. Clara had crafted careful stories. Daddy was busy with important work. Daddy lived far away. Daddy still loved them, even though they couldn't see him. The truth was more complicated. Clara's law practice was struggling. Single motherhood was exhausting and expensive. The $2 million from Margaret had seemed like salvation, but it came with conditions that haunted her daily. "I saw the engagement announcement," Margaret said during their secret phone call. "Beautiful girl. Sofia, isn't it? What do you want, Margaret? To make things right. Damien deserves to know about his children before he starts a new family." Clara's heart raced. "You said if I ever contacted him." "Things change, dear. I think it's time for honesty, don't you?" But Margaret's version of honesty was carefully crafted manipulation. She convinced Clara that surprising Damien at his wedding would be romantic, a chance for the family to reunite dramatically. She paid for Clara's travel, arranged her accommodations, even helped pick out outfits for the twins. "He'll be shocked at first," Margaret assured her. "But when he sees those beautiful children, he'll realize what really matters." Clara, desperate to give her children their father and trusting Margaret's maternal instincts, agreed to the plan. Meanwhile, Damien and Sophia planned their dream wedding. 300 guests, oceanfront ceremony, every detail perfect. Damien had never been happier. He was finally ready to trust again, to build a family with someone who loved him for who he truly was. Sophia noticed Margaret's increased involvement in the wedding planning, constant suggestions about guest lists, seating arrangements, timing. But she interpreted it as motherly excitement, not strategic positioning. "Your mom really wants this to be perfect," Sophia told Damien the night before the wedding. "She's been planning this longer than we have," Damien replied, not realizing how literal that statement was. Margaret's trap was set. Clara and the twins were in town, believing they were part of a joyful reunion. Damien and Sophia were hours away from what they thought would be their happily ever after. Only Margaret knew that tomorrow would be the day she destroyed her son's life to save her own position in it. June 15th, 2024. The Sterling estate on Nantucket glowed like something from a fairy tale. White silk draping fluttered in the ocean breeze. 300 guests filled ivory chairs, arranged in perfect rows across the manicured lawn. The altar, adorned with cascading white roses and baby's breath, framed the endless Atlantic horizon. Violinists played Pachelbel's canon as waves crashed rhythmically against the cliffs below. Damien Sterling stood at the altar in his custom-tailored tuxedo, hands clasped behind his back, watching the procession begin. His best man whispered nervous jokes, but Damien barely heard them. His attention was fixed on the mansion's French doors, waiting for his bride. The bridesmaids glided down the petal-strewn aisle in flowing champagne gowns. Margaret Sterling sat in the front row, dabbing her eyes with a lace handkerchief, the picture of maternal pride. She wore navy blue Chanel and a smile that seemed almost too perfect. Then the music swelled. The crowd rose as one. Sophia appeared in the doorway, breathtaking in her custom Vera Wang gown. The dress flowed behind her like liquid silk, its intricate beadwork catching the late afternoon sun. Her dark hair was swept into an elegant updo, secured with her grandmother's pearl comb, something old, something borrowed, something that connected her to generations of love. Damien's breath caught. After everything he'd endured, the childhood trauma, the failed marriage, the years of isolation, happiness finally felt within reach. Sophia began her walk down the aisle, her father's arm steady beneath hers. Guests murmured appreciatively. Chimeras flashed discreetly. The moment was perfect, magical, everything they'd dreamed of. Halfway to the altar, Sophia's steps faltered. A commotion near the mansion caught everyone's attention. Margaret had risen from her seat and was walking toward the main house, her movements deliberate and theatrical. Guests turned in their chairs, confused by this breach of wedding protocol. "Margaret, what are you doing?" Damien called out, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet ceremony. His mother didn't answer. Instead, she disappeared into the mansion, leaving 300 guests whispering nervously. Sophia stood frozen in the aisle, her bouquet trembling in her hands. 2 minutes passed. Then 5. The violinists played the same melody repeatedly, unsure whether to stop or continue. Then Margaret reappeared. She wasn't alone. Walking beside her, holding her arm with obvious reluctance, was a woman Damien recognized, but hadn't seen in 5 years. Clara Bennett looked older, more tired, but unmistakably the same person who'd once shared his bed, his dreams, his deepest secrets. But that wasn't the shock that froze Damien's blood. 2 small children flanked Clara, each holding one of her hands. A boy and a girl, maybe 3 years old. The girl wore a white dress with a pink sash. The boy wore a tiny blue suit with a bow tie. Their dark hair was perfectly combed, their little faces serious as they took in the crowd of staring strangers. Both children had Damien's distinctive green eyes, his strong jawline, his stubborn chin. The resemblance was undeniable, unmistakable, devastating. "Ladies and gentlemen," Margaret announced, her voice carrying clearly across the silent lawn, "I believe in the power of family. I believe that love conquers all obstacles, and I believe that my son deserves to know the truth before he makes the biggest decision of his life." She placed her hand on the little girl's shoulder. "This is Lily Sterling, and this is Lucas Sterling. Damien, meet your children." The words hit like a physical blow. Damien's knees nearly buckled. His face went white, then red, then white again. 300 guests gasped collectively, their shock rippling through the crowd like a wave. Sophia dropped her bouquet. The white roses scattered across the grass as she stared at the children who shared her fiancé's features. Her father tightened his grip on her arm, preventing her from collapsing. "What the hell is this?" Damien's voice cracked across the ceremony. Clara stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "Damien, I tried to tell you. I called. I wrote letters. You disappeared," he shouted, his composure finally breaking. "You vanished after the divorce. You never said a word about." He gestured helplessly at the twins, who were now clinging to their mother's dress, frightened by the adults' raised voices. "She couldn't tell you," Margaret interjected smoothly, "because I paid her not to." The crowd erupted. Gasps, shouts, the scraping of chairs as guests stood for better views. Cell phones emerged despite the unplugged ceremony requests. This was the kind of drama that would dominate social media within minutes. Share this video if you can't believe what just happened, because even by billionaire standards, this was unprecedented chaos. "You did what?" Damien turned on his mother, fury and betrayal warring in his expression. $2 million, Margaret said calmly, as if discussing the weather. "In exchange for her silence. I was protecting you from another abandonment." Clara's face crumpled. "I needed the money. I was struggling alone with twins, and you'd made it clear you never wanted to see me again. Because you cheated." Damien exploded. "Once. During the worst period of our marriage. And I told you immediately. After I already knew." He pulled the old photographs from his jacket pocket, the same ones Margaret had sent anonymously 5 years earlier. "These showed up at my office the day after you confessed." Clara stared at the photos, then at Margaret. Understanding dawned on her face like a terrible sunrise. "You sent those to him?" Margaret's mask finally slipped. "I protected my son from a woman who would destroy him. By destroying us all." Clara screamed. Little Lily began crying. Lucas wrapped his arms around his sister, his young face confused and frightened. The children had become props in an adult drama they couldn't understand. Sophia finally found her voice. "Damien." Her tone was deadly quiet. "Did you know about this?" "I swear to you I had no idea." His eyes pleaded with her to believe him. "Sophia, please." But she was already walking away, her wedding dress trailing behind her like a white flag of surrender. Her father followed, shooting Damien a look of pure contempt. The ceremony dissolved into chaos. Guests fled toward their cars, phones already buzzing with calls to gossip columnists. Wedding planners scrambled to salvage what they could. The photographers, initially instructed to capture romantic moments, now documented the complete implosion of a billionaire's carefully constructed life. DNA tests 3 days later would confirm what everyone already knew. Lily and Lucas Sterling were indeed Damien's biological children, conceived during his final reconciliation attempt with Clara before their divorce. Margaret's manipulation ran deeper than anyone imagined. She had intercepted 17 letters from Clara, blocked 43 phone calls, returned dozens of birthday cards and Christmas gifts meant for Damien. For 5 years, she had systematically erased any trace of his children from his life. All to maintain control, all to keep her son dependent on her guidance. all to ensure that no one else could claim the primary position in Damien Sterling's heart. The wedding that was supposed to represent new beginnings had instead exposed the rotten foundation beneath a billionaire's empire. And the woman responsible sat in the front row, watching her son's world collapse, still convinced she had done the right thing. Sometimes the people who claim to love us most are the ones who hurt us deepest. The wedding guests had barely cleared the estate when Sophia's ultimatum arrived via text message. Choose them or choose me. You can't have both. Damien stared at his phone, still wearing his tuxedo, surrounded by scattered rose petals and overturned chairs. The woman he'd planned to marry couldn't even face him directly anymore. He called her 17 times. Each call went straight to voicemail. Sophia, please. I didn't know about the children. You have to believe me. We can work through this together. But Sofia Alvarez was done. A woman who spent her days fighting for children's lives couldn't understand how a father could be kept from his own kids for 5 years regardless of the manipulation involved. In her mind, Damien should have tried harder, looked deeper, fought more fiercely for the truth. The relationship was over before the wedding cake could be thrown away. Meanwhile, Clara found herself trapped in a nightmare she'd never anticipated. Margaret's romantic reunion had become a legal battlefield that made front-page news across the country. Billionaire's secret twins exposed at wedding screamed the New York Post. CEO's mother destroys son's marriage, declared the Wall Street Journal. TMZ ran footage of the wedding chaos on repeat, turning Lily and Lucas into unwilling celebrities before their 4th birthday. Damien hired the best family lawyers money could buy and sued for full custody. His argument was straightforward. Clara had accepted payment to hide his children from him, violating his parental rights for financial gain. Clara's counter-lawsuit painted a different picture. She alleged that Damien was an emotionally distant father figure who had abandoned his first wife during fertility struggles and showed no capacity for the daily challenges of parenting young children. He was never home during our marriage, Clara testified during a closed hearing. His response to every emotional crisis was to throw money at the problem or disappear into his work. Why would fatherhood be different? The court documents revealed the staggering scope of Margaret's manipulation. Phone records showed blocked calls. Email logs demonstrated intercepted messages. Bank statements confirmed the $2 million payment structure, monthly installments designed to ensure Clara's continued silence. Most damning was a recorded conversation between Margaret and her private investigator discussing long-term strategies for maintaining family stability. The recording made clear that Margaret viewed Clara's children as threats to her influence over Damien's fortune and legacy. Mrs. Sterling treated those kids like obstacles to be managed, not grandchildren to be loved, Clara's attorney argued. The media circus devastated everyone involved. Lily and Lucas couldn't attend preschool without photographers lurking outside. Clara hired security guards for grocery store trips. Damien's business meetings were interrupted by reporters shouting questions about his secret family. Green Horizon Energy's stock price dropped 12% as investors questioned the CEO's judgment and character. Board members privately discussed whether a man who could be so thoroughly deceived by his own mother possessed the awareness necessary to run a multi-billion-dollar corporation. The legal battle raged for 8 months before reaching a private settlement. Damien received shared custody, weekends, and alternating holidays, but Clara retained primary residence. The financial terms remained sealed, though sources suggested Damien established trust funds worth $50 million for each child. More important than money was the emotional cost. Lily and Lucas, caught between warring parents and invasive media coverage, began showing signs of anxiety. Lucas developed a stutter. Lily had nightmares about the scary cameras. The children who should have been Damien's greatest joy had become symbols of his deepest failures. Margaret faced her own consequences. Damien cut all financial support and banned her from his properties. The woman who had controlled a billionaire's personal life now lived alone in a modest apartment, her Chanel wardrobe replaced by off-the-rack clothing from discount stores. She maintained her innocence until the end. "Everything I did was to protect my son," she told a reporter outside the courthouse. Someday he'll understand that, but Damien would never understand. More importantly, he would never forgive. Trust is earned in drops but lost in buckets. Margaret had spent a lifetime building her son's dependence, only to destroy it completely in a single afternoon. Her manipulation had cost Damien his relationship with Sophia, his connection to his children's early years, and his faith in family bonds. Family manipulation can have generational consequences. Lily and Lucas would grow up knowing their father as a weekend visitor rather than a daily presence. They would carry the trauma of that wedding day disruption, of being used as weapons in an adult war they never chose to fight. Sometimes the price of revenge is everything you love. Margaret had won her battle against Clara but lost the war for her son's heart. In trying to maintain control, she had guaranteed her own exile. 2 years later, Damien remained single, focused entirely on building relationships with his children and rebuilding his company's reputation. He never remarried. He never spoke to his mother again. The wedding that was supposed to unite a family had instead fractured everyone involved, proving that some betrayals cut so deep they can never fully heal. The Sterling family tragedy isn't just a cautionary tale. It reflects real patterns we see repeatedly in wealthy families across America. From the Getty family's custody battles to the Murdoch inheritance disputes, money amplifies family dysfunction rather than solving it. Court records show that 70% of wealthy families lose their fortunes by the second generation, often due to internal conflicts rather than business failures. Margaret Sterling's manipulation mirrors documented cases like the Pritzker family feud, where relatives used private investigators and financial leverage to control inheritance decisions, or the Johnson dynasty, where family members spent decades in legal battles over hidden assets and concealed relationships. These stories teach us universal truths that transcend wealth levels. First, controlling people through secrecy always backfires. Margaret's 5-year deception didn't protect her relationship with Damien, it guaranteed its destruction. Second, children become casualties when adults use them as weapons. Lily and Lucas will spend years in therapy working through trauma that wasn't their fault but became their burden. Third, the desire to protect someone often masks the desire to control them. Margaret convinced herself she was saving Damien from heartbreak, while actually ensuring he experienced the deepest betrayal possible. Fourth, trust, once broken, leaves permanent scars. Even if Damien eventually forgives Clara for accepting the money, their co-parenting relationship will forever carry the weight of those lost years. But there's hope in this story too. Damien rebuilt his relationship with his children. Clara found the strength to refuse future manipulation. Even families shattered by deception can heal, slowly, painfully, but genuinely. The most powerful lesson: family isn't defined by DNA or money, it's defined by consistency, honesty, and unconditional support. Margaret was Damien's biological mother, but not his true family. Sophia could have been his chosen family if trust hadn't been poisoned. Subscribe if you want more extraordinary stories that teach powerful life lessons, because the wealthy and powerful face the same human struggles we all do, just with higher stakes and bigger consequences. Coming up next week, the tech billionaire who discovered his wife was actually his half-sister, a story about family secrets, DNA testing, and the shocking discovery that destroyed Silicon Valley's most celebrated marriage. Remember, in a world where money can buy almost anything, it still can't purchase the one thing that matters most: authentic human connection built on truth. Sometimes the most expensive lessons come from the people we trust most.